Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It is the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyofcruising.net. It helps support the channel through our partnership with Where's Walters Travel. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul. And this week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome back Gary Bembridge, embodiment of the successful Tips for Travelers blog, podcast, and most notably YouTube channel. I have to be careful introducing Gary, lest you think of me as being sensationalistic. I'll just give you one opinion and one fact about Gary. It is my opinion that Gary is the smartest person out there when it comes to cruising. Regardless of what I think, the one fact I will share is Gary is the most followed cruise personality in the world. I featured Gary and Tips for Travelers in Cruising Interrupted in a section called The Cruise Communicators. You can read all about the development and growth of Tips for Travelers in Cruising Interrupted, or hear the condensed version when Gary was last on the Joy of Cruising podcast, episode 49. Today, we'll catch up with Gary on what has transpired since we last spoke. Hint, a lot. Gary epitomizes the kind of individuals I sought when I began writing the Joy of Cruising books and subsequently the Joy of Cruising podcast. Passionate cruisers who act on their passion in fascinating ways. From a businessman who blogged about his travels part-time to full-time most popular cruise influencer, content creator, knowledgeable cruise resource in the world. Welcome back, Gary, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Paul, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me back on.
So how you been doing?
Great, yeah, busy, cruising around a lot, traveling around a lot, having lots of fun, so that's always good.
Well, I can imagine just how busy you are. I have an idea of what's been going on since we last spoke, but you can confirm that. But before we catch up on what's been happening, tell the listeners, few listeners who don't know, tell the listeners about yourself, where you're from, where you live, your professional background, anything else you would like to share.
Sure, yes. So I grew up in Zimbabwe. But I live in London. I've lived in London since like 1987, so 30 whatever years. My background is kind of marketing. So my professional background is I used to be in local marketing, country marketing, European marketing, and most of my career was in global marketing. I used to work for Johnson & Johnson, which the consumer side, which has now been spun off to a separate company. I think it's called Kenvue or something. But I used to be the global marketing VP, vice president for kind of marketing and advertising and product development for Johnson's Baby, anti-aging. So that was really my kind of background. And then I had always, from a young age, planned to retire when I was 55 and kind of do something different. And so I worked to that, I did that. And I then started focusing much more on my tips for travelers. I had a blog, a podcast. Then I really focused on YouTube. Really focused on YouTube kind of from 2018, and then it kind of just took off from there. So now I sort of do Tips for Travelers full time. I keep saying that I'm going to sort of dial back, do less, but that never quite happens.
Tips for Travelers on YouTube has really taken off. I know that there used to be sort of a rack up of the top cruise YouTubers in the world. I don't see that anymore, but you were way out in front the last time I saw it, so yeah, I doubt that's changed.
Yeah, no, it's still. I mean, I'm assuming at some point that people will overtake me just because it's younger and newer and kind of dynamic people coming through. So I'm sure at some point in the next year or two or so, people will overtake me. But yeah, so it's still in terms of the totally cruise focused channels. I am. I mean, there are some other channels like Trek Trendy, for example, who do a combination of aviation, trains, and now is doing more and more cruising. They have more subscribers than I do, for example. And then there's one or two others that sort of will dabble a little bit with cruising. But yeah, in terms of people who mostly like 80-90% of their content is cruising, I'm still ahead. But there's lots of people coming through. Emma Cruises, Ilana, Royal Caribbean bloggers. People kind of bubbling up and coming through very quickly.
So, as alluded to in the intro, so much to catch up on. Let's take the first one I'd like to hear about. Now I know that you avoid maiden cruises generally, but that you were on something like the second cruise for Cunard Queen Anne, a dream for many, but it had some hiccups initially, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think just pick up on that point. Well, I mean, I don't go on maiden voyages, and I kind of encourage or recommend people don't go on maiden voyages unless they literally want the bragging rights to say they've been on a maiden voyage, because by definition these are new ships, new crew, bugs haven't been figured out, they haven't worked out how to work as a team. And certainly pre-pandemic they used to probably do more to iron out some of those things, because they would often run shakedown cruises which would run at sort of 40-50% capacity. And certainly because most of the cruise ships are built, in fact, all cruise ships are really built in Europe, they'd often come out of the shipyard in Europe. They would, get trade, media, employees kind of on, for 2 or 3 cruises, and then they would launch maidens. So, but they don't seem to do that as much anymore. So maiden voyages, I think, are always really exciting to avoid them. My original plan wasn't to be on the second voyage because, but the ship got cancelled, and that's where it worked out. But yeah, they had challenges, but particularly around dining and food, and kind of because they went from having some small trials to literally having a completely full ship. So it was mostly around food and dining and service. The food not being warm enough, service being a bit erratic. That was kind of the main stuff. We were on for 2 weeks, so they did it 1 week maiden. We were on them for 2 weeks, and across that course of 2 weeks, we saw quite a significant change from arriving, just as they were getting into their stride. So the people who were on the maiden were, lots of people complaining. There was lots of people made lots of content about how bad it was, but it's kind of, I think it's to be expected. And I was even saying to people people that we spoke to on the trip who were sort of complaining, it was like, well, you did book the second voyage. It's kind of, this is all new. And particularly because it was, a completely new class of ship. It was a Pinnacle class ship. It's a new ship as well. So even, and it's a much more modern ship. Cunard hasn't had a ship for a while. So the laundry works differently. The kitchen equipment's different. So I always avoid people, kind of avoid them. And because often they're at a premium. The ironic thing is people are often paying more money to go on a cruise. It's definitely going to be worse than if they waited 3 months. It's like crazy. But yeah. But I mean, it's interesting because the ship itself, it's very interesting because it's very different decor to the other Cunard ships. But it is, people keep asking me, is it because Cunard want to go for a younger clientele? I'm not sure that's true, because they're using it for their ex-Southampton sailings, which tend to attract an older audience, a more traditional Cunard cruiser. So I think, and the program is completely the same as it always has been. So it's not like it's a more youthful program. So yeah, I mean, we had a great time. We had great food. We enjoyed it. We kind of took the hiccups in its stride. I mean, the other problem is all the shows, like Sun Princess and other ships coming in, all the shows weren't ready to go. So people on the Maiden didn't see all the shows. Even we didn't see one of the shows because one of the shows was supposed to premiere. The lead actually the day before in dress rehearsals slashed her head open and had to have stitches. Then they brought
my goodness.
Luckily, it's actually a West End show that's been adapted. So they ended up bringing in for a later cruise one of the girls that had played the lead in the West End to cover until the girl was well enough to take over. So, all those kind of crazy things happening.
So notwithstanding the hiccups, tell us about the experience itself.
Well, I mean, it's a very classic Cunard experience. Cunard, well, like many ships actually, now they still has a sort of if you want to call it a class system or a differentiated system. So so they still have the Britannia restaurant, which is for people in ocean view balcony cabins. If you've got kind of mini suite, you've got Princess. If you go in a suite, you've got Queen's Grill. So they still segment a little bit where you dine based on what cabin of grade you've booked. It's not quite as formal as it used to be, but they still have their gala nights where most people will dress up in gowns and tuxedos. Lots of kind of music around, more classical kind of music. Enrichment is always a massive big part. They had 4 speakers on, like they would normally do. They have kind of one celebrity speaker, which we were on was actually there was 2 and we were on because we were on for 2 weeks. But one was, say, Will Carling, who's a very well-known rugby captain. In the UK, was the youngest and longest serving rugby captain. So they would, and then they have people who talk about history or whatever. So very classic kind of program, which we're very familiar with and kind of sort of enjoyed.
If I may ask, what was your what kind of cabin did you have?
So we went in a Queen's Grill cabin because in May is my Mark and my partner Mark and my birthday's in May. So in May we will always do something kind of treat-wise, and Mark especially really likes Queen's Grill, and the food is incredible. So yes, we went in a Queen's Grill cabin, sort of I think it was Q4, which is sort of the bulk of the Queen's Grill cabins are Q4s.
So help me understand. So the Queen's Grill cabin, is that's considered you're able to eat at that high end place that
so
you
if
mentioned?
you think, if you're familiar with Celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
for example, Celebrity has the retreat,
Right.
MSC has the yacht club,
Right.
It's sort of similar to that,
Okay.
although it's not quite as enclosed space as that. So the grills, so you'll have a grills lounge, which on one side will then have the Princess Grill restaurant, the other side will have the Queen's Grill restaurant. So in the Queen's Grill restaurant, you have your same table, same waiting staff, but you can eat any time. So it's not fixed dining, but you do have your same table, which is what I like, and certainly my partner Mark likes, is you really get to know the serving staff. The food is phenomenal. It's a separate kitchen to Britannia Grill kitchen, so it's a separate kitchen. You can, every day they will have a list of items that you can order off menu, but you can ask pretty much for anything. So if you say, can I have roast chicken tonight? They'll do roast chicken for you. If you want beef tartare, they'll do it for you. Lots of stuff is served at your table. You can have caviar if you want to, which is kind of included in the fare. But the strange thing with Cunard is that they don't include drink they don't include Wi-Fi in that premium fare. It's kind of a very strange setup, but it's really about the dining experience. I still think it probably has the best dining of any ship, including if you go on a Regent or I haven't been on New Crystal yet, but if you go on Regent Silversea, the dining experience in Queen's Grill and Princess Grill, because it's the same menu, I think is still probably the best that you can get.
What was your itinerary?
So we did an itinerary. We did an itinerary which is not one I'm particularly wild about, which is Canary Islands. So it's not, for me, it's not a particularly interesting itinerary. We did it more at the time because it worked with Architect Vacation. It was sort of around our birthday time, and it was a 2-week trip. I thought if I want to experience a new ship, I want to go on for more than a week. So I went to the Canary Islands. So it had a couple of stops. We went to where do we go now? La Corona in Spain. We stopped. Then it was mostly the Canary Islands. So it was a lot of sea days. It was probably half of that was sea days, which Cunard are very good at doing. Sea days, it's the kind of thing they do.
Now, I meant to ask when you were describing your eating or dining facilities, is there any, at the level that you stayed at, is there any need to go to specialty restaurants, or are specialty restaurants kind of included?
No, they're not. No is really the answer. So Cunard historically has never really been very much into specialty dining. It's very much about the main dining experience. They've introduced more specialty restaurants than they have anywhere else on any of the other ships. So normally they only have the veranda, which is sort of like a steakhouse option. It's the only specialty. Then in the Lido or King's Court, they will do sort of some themed evenings, Indian, whatever. But on the ship, they have a couple. So they have Sir Samuel's, which is the steakhouse. They have Ajiwa, which is sort of an Asian kind of fusion. Then they have a Mediterranean and sort of an Indian kind of sort of spicy kind of thing. But we did actually book some speciality. We went to one and then which is Ajiwa. And we said, this is crazy because this is we're paying a lot of money, and the food in Queen's Court and the service is just way better. So we actually canceled other plans. But it's not, Cunard are trying to build more specialty dining in it, because I guess that's a trend. It's a way to make more money, I guess. But it's not a big thing.
Okay.
Like on, say, if you're going on Norwegian or Royal Caribbean or stuff like that, it's not a big part of the cruise experience, really. And especially quite small. The dining rooms, especially restaurants, are quite small because of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would you say was the biggest distinction between Queen Anne and previous Cunard ships you sailed?
There's quite a lot of difference. I mean, the one difference is it's a completely, for Cunard, it's a completely new class of ship. So they have 3 ships. They've got Queen Mary 2, which of course is a one-off, specifically designed liner for transatlantic service. So there is only one of those. And then the other 2 ships are Vista class ships. So Queen Elizabeth and Queen Victoria are Vista class ships. So, like the Holland America, Koningsdam, New Amsterdam, all this kind of stuff. And then, so this is a completely different class of ship. So it's a stretched pinnacle class. So if people have been on, New Statendam or Koningsdam, they will kind of recognize the ship, although they've added a 70-meter section in the middle. So it actually takes 3,000 passengers. It takes about 400-500 more than a pinnacle class ship. So it's going to be a different class of ship. They also moved away from the Art Deco look and feel. So the other ships are very Art Deco styles, much darker. This is much lighter, much more contemporary. They've introduced, most of the venues are the same. They still have the Golden Lion pub, the Queen's Room, all the kind of classic venues. But and they've introduced one new venue, which is the Bright Light Society, which is sort of like a nightclub, interactive cabaret venue. But they basically sort of reimagined them. I think probably they've gone kind of very modern. They've used very different designers. So it lacks some of the distinctiveness, I think, of Cunard. You sort of feel, I use the analogy in my videos, you sort of feel at times that you're on a ship that Cunard have chartered to run the Cunard program.
Okay.
What I mean? Everything is Cunard, but the ship doesn't feel as Cunard. There's little nods to Art Deco here and there. So it's dramatically different. And they've, normally on a Cunard ship, the Queen's Room is this big, dramatic room. That's the ballroom. And it's kind of a little bit plain. The Britannia restaurant is normally this massive kind of Art Deco, incredible, room. It just looks like any other big ship main dining room. So they probably lost some of the drama, I think, versus the other ships.
In terms of demographics, do you sense a slight difference, or is it a typical
No.
Cunard experience?
Absolutely no difference at all.
Really?
It's completely, yeah. I mean, over time, I listened to a couple of podcasts where, which one of the Clear podcasts actually, where they had interviewed one of the sales guys from Cunard, who spoke about they have seen a lot of new to Cunard booking the ship. So they are bringing new to Cunard people. However, again, because it's sailing ex-Southampton and it's Cunard, that tends to attract an older demographic, generally speaking. I mean, there are other lines like Pinot, which target families very aggressively, which in the summer, they will have lots of families, celebrity, again, based ships here, and they will target families in the summer. But generally speaking, it's I mean, on our sailing, it was probably even the older end of the Cunard family, if you like,
really?
Passenger. But it was definitely, and talking to people who've been on subsequently, it's very much standard demographic, older. I mean, over time, we'll see whether it settles. But the program is still, as I said, it's a very classic program. If you go on as a 40-something, it's got nothing for you. I mean, unless you're really into Richmond classical music, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Okay.
It's not giving you anything contemporary from that perspective.
Hmm. Now, Gary, a couple of times you mentioned that because it embarked out of Southampton, it draws an older crowd. Help me understand that.
Well, yes.
Why do you say that?
Yes. So in the UK, I mean, cruising is generally slightly older than it is in the US. I mean, it's catching up very quickly as more families cruise. But you're sort of because you don't have as much, particularly out of Florida, you don't have the equivalent, short, hot weather cruises. You don't get a much that sort of 20, 30 something, 40
Oh,
something.
okay.
So you sort of get older people and people with families are the main people who cruise. And also, it means no flight cruising. So it means people can drive or get a bus or train. So there tends to be a more cautious traveler who doesn't want to fly cruise. And in reality, if you're sailing out of Southampton, it's generally, if you want to go to the Mediterranean, you need to. It's going to take 2 weeks. You need a 2-week long cruise, because you need the time to get to the Mediterranean. So those itineraries tend to be things like to the Norwegian fjords, which again is not a big family kind of thing, or to Iceland or around the UK. So that also tends to skew a little bit older. So it's a no fly. And the itineraries are either longer because they need to be able to go to the Mediterranean, or it's kind of destinations that are not kind of hot weather destinations. So if you want to go for a summer break, you're more likely to fly to Barcelona and get a ship, or fly to Athens and kind of get a ship, or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Understood. Any part? Oh, I know what I wanted to ask you. Now, I have Cunard on my bucket list just because I feel like I need to sail a Cunard ship, but I'm probably the most informal guy in the world. That's hyperbole, but I don't like formality. And Cunard I've always been hesitant about Cunard because it sounds like it's very formal. I'm getting the sense that that's being relaxed a little bit. For instance, someone told me that, I can avoid dressing up the whole cruise. I just can't go to certain places on gala night. Do you sense that changing or not really?
Yeah, I mean, my personal view is if you don't like getting dressed up, I wouldn't go on Cunard, because it's part of the experience, is the dressing up. So actually, it's kind of counterintuitive because it's a big part of the experience. You're right. On those kind of formal nights, you can't go to the main dining room. Theoretically, you can't go to the theatre. You can't go to the Queen's Room. You can go to the Bright Light Society, and you can go to the casino, and you can go to the buffet. Paul, I mean, I feel like if you are someone who doesn't really like to dress up, I almost wouldn't go on Cunard. I'll give you one exception when you should, because it is such a big part of the experience. The whole ship on gala night, everyone's in their tuxedos and glamorous gowns, and they have masquerade balls or black and white balls or Roaring 20 balls. So it's a big part of what they do. Normally in formal night, there'll be kind of a big event. They'll have a special menu in the dining room. There'll be lots of stuff going on, so you kind of can't tap into that. But you're right, you could go on a Cunard cruise, and some people do. And on gala night, they will go to the buffet. Strictly speaking, you can't go to the theatres. You can't go and see the show, and they'll often put on the bigger shows or the big guest artists on that night. You can go to Bright Light Society, which is the sort of the more cabaret evening, and you can go to the casino. And you can go. There's another lounge you can go to, which is like a coffee shop, bar kind of area. But you do miss out on kind of experience. Saying that, if to do a Queen Mary 2 transatlantic is the ultimate Cunard voyage. That is the one to do, and that, if even as a non-dressing up guy, I would encourage you to do that, because that whole experience of the transatlantic is phenomenal. So although you'd miss out on some of the dressing up, and they do have a little bit more formal nights and whatever, but just that whole experience of the transatlantic, sailing in and out of New York. The enrichment speakers tend to be very high kind of quality kind of speakers. That would be the exception, but yeah.
when I started cruising, it was very common. Like I think on my first cruise, I brought something like 3 suits.
Yeah, me too.
You know,
Yeah,
it was what was it, 1988.
yeah,
And I've worn a tux on cruises, so it's not like I am totally against. You know, I used to wear suits every day, like I'm sure you did
yeah,
in your previous
yeah,
life. But once I discovered, cruises where you don't have to dress. Once it became kind of normalized to be casual, it's like, oh, I could never go back to the old way. But I think part of it, Gary, to be honest with you, is I'm being thrifty or I'm being cheap because the suits I used to wear every day to work. I retired 3 years ago. I suspect I won't get in them. And
right.
the last time I wore a tux on a cruise, it was 2018. I remember it distinctly. And you know, it's what 2020. No way I'm getting in that tux. So I would have to buy a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
go on a
I mean,
Cunard
you can
cruise.
wear a suit and tie on a smart night on Cunard, so you can get away with suit. But you're right, you still have to buy a suit.
Yeah, yeah, I'd have to buy a suit, buy a tux, buy shirts, so it's probably me being cheap. But I still have Cunard on my bucket list. I haven't given up on it, but there are other things that I'm checking off first. So let's move on to something else we discussed in the last time we met that has changed very significantly. When you were on the show last, I asked you, have you ever considered a group cruise? And you hadn't done a group cruise, but you had one coming up, and now you have another coming up in, if I understand correctly, in September.
Yeah.
So so tell us all about your successful first group cruise, and then give us the scoop on the upcoming one.
Yeah, so in total, I've had one and I have two coming up. So I did the first one I did, which was it was with Holland America Eurodam in April, and that was a patron and channel member cruise because I wanted my first group cruise to sort of be a kind of to learn and discover how it went. So it was quite a small group. We had 35 people, and it was the Caribbean stuff. The original plan was going to be a partial transit of the Panama Canal, but they cancelled it, and so we just did a 7 night Eurodam cruise. It was really good fun. It was very successful actually. So and the reason I think it worked was, first of all, was channel members and patrons, so they're obviously very kind of passionate followers. We A couple of things really worked well. So we had a couple of meetups where we did trivia and competitions and Q&As and things. Every night we would have drinks together. We would also arrange to have tables together, and every night I hosted a table so everyone could have dinner with me one evening. And that worked incredibly well because the group kind of bonded around that. So then the next group cruise, what I hadn't had on that group cruise was group excursions, and that was probably the most requested thing coming out from that group cruise. So the next group cruise I've got is in September on Celebrity Eclipse. It's an 11-night Canada and New England cruise. So that channel members and patrons kind of had a pre-sell period, and then it opened up, and we sold out. So there's going to be, well, it was going to be 75, but a few people had to drop out as it as it comes by, as inevitably happens. So I think there's going to be 70 people on that, so 70 people on that. And on that one, it's going to be relatively similar approach with hosting table every night. We had there, because it's longer, we have 3 different meetups. I'm working on having some group cruises, but also what's quite exciting is been partnering with the Meet Boston. So we depart from Boston. So working with the travel board, there for Meet Boston, they're arranging a half-day tour for the group beforehand, and then they're actually hosting. There'll be a small charge for that for people, but in the evening they're hosting a reception with food and drink and lots of Boston dignitaries for the groups. That's quite exciting.
Very nice.
Yeah, that's going to be great. So that's an 11-night one. Then I have another one which
Now let me interrupt, Gary. So the one in September, you said it sold out.
yeah, so it actually sold out. We sold out all the cabins that we had reserved, and then basically we still had a waiting list, but the cruise itself was selling out so fast that we couldn't get more cabins. So both my group is sold out and the cruise is sold out. So
Okay, okay. I was going to allow you to do a commercial
all
with
right,
my
right,
humongous audience,
yeah.
but there's no sense in doing that because it's you're not taking anyone else. Okay.
No one else can join that. Then I have another one which is in the at the end of January 2026, which is on Holland America Zeta Dam, which is I think is it a 14 night or 30? I can't remember now, but it's 30 or 14 night from Miami to San Diego, so a full transit of the Panama Canal.
Oh, wow.
So because I want to keep the group relatively small, but we sold out the cabins that we held, but we've actually added more cabins to that one. And because the demand is so high, that's again is going to be a patron and channel member cruise. But what's interesting with both the first cruise, the second cruise, and definitely the third cruise is the amount of solo travelers. So I think on the Eclipse one, I think we've got maybe 15 solo travelers, and on the Panama Canal one, I think we've now got 20 or 21 solo travelers. So what I'm finding, and I kind of guess makes sense, that going on a group cruise is very appealing to solo travelers because talking to the solos, they found it great because you've got people that you can meet, interact with, go on tour with. You can have people that you're going to sit with people that you're getting on with for dinner. It's kind of a support kind of group around. So that was kind of an interesting learn. I hadn't expected. Looking back, it's kind of okay, it makes sense. Solos coming on a group cruise because of course it's very expensive because we didn't get solo rate for them. But yeah, so that's good. So
Is Mark joining you on both of those upcoming cruises?
unfortunately not. So definitely this one, no, he can't come on this one, and probably not this. I mean, I'm hoping on the 2026 one, but because he'll probably still be working, then it doesn't quite work. But we'll see. Yeah.
What are your key learnings from that first obviously successful solo cruise, not solo group cruise?
Group cruise. Well, I think probably the most interesting. I was kind of nervous about the sense would I be needing to arrange everything and keep people entertained all the time. And what I hadn't quite appreciated, but it was a pleasant surprise, was actually people are coming on a group cruise because they like to be with people. They're very, they're sociable people. They don't want to be by themselves. They want to meet people, do things, chat, hook up for drinks, arrange to go to the line dancing class together. So actually what I realized is I didn't have to worry so much is because the group sort of took upon itself to entertain itself when we weren't doing group kind of activities. So that was a big learning, is the sense of these are very people who come, first of all, passionate about Tour Travelers. They have a common link because they know Tour Travelers. They're likely to be kind of a similar mindset. And they wanted to be with other people. So it was very interesting that people, they were going to craft class together. They were going off touring together. They were doing stuff together. And so that was good. But the other learning was the importance of the dining together dinner thing. And that's been a bit of a challenge with the cruise lines to get them to make it work. Because nowadays, you've got first sitting, second sitting, anytime dining, So trying to get the cruise lines to kind of find a way to make it work, that's not the crazy late time. So that was a learning, is working really, really early. And also the other learning, which is how different cruise lines manage groups, and some are better than others. So, some, the way they're structured to manage groups, both shoreside and on the ship. So we'll see once we're on Celebrity how that goes, but certainly Holland America, both, the land-based group team and the on board were just phenomenal at making things work and being very supportive. The other learning, which is a more practical one, is the cruise lines, because of the cross-country selling rules they have. Normally, a travel agent based in the UK can only sell to people in the UK. Travel in the US can only sell to people in the US. Someone in Germany only to Germany because of the way they're structured. We had to organize the groups because we booked through my travel agent, Sarah, that everyone had to book through the UK. So the prices are in pound sterling. The terms and conditions are UK terms and conditions, which means you can't book, a refundable deposit. So some of those sort of things, you kind of, from a practical perspective, you just have to kind of learn. Yeah.
And clearly, you have an international audience.
Yes.
So you had
Mostly US, yeah.
You had a lot of folks from the US. Okay.
Yeah. So I think on that April cruise of the 35, I think other than three people were from the UK, and the rest were US.
Wow.
Canadians, and that's also partly because it was a long way to go from the UK for a week long.
Sure.
Certainly, the one in September is a little bit more diverse. It's still mostly US, but we do have some people from Australia, more people from the UK coming. I think of the 70, maybe 10 are from the UK. A couple of Australians, Canadians, Germans coming, but again, mostly US. And then I haven't looked at the breakdown for the Panama one yet, but it's probably about a similar mix. But it sort of syncs also with my audience is sort of about 60, 70%, depending on the month, US. Probably once you have the Canadians to North America is probably about 80%. Then it's probably about 50% UK, and then the rest is New Zealand. Yeah.
Then another activity that you participated in since we last spoke, I understand you went to Alaska on Viking.
Yeah.
And so both of those are on my bucket list. I've been to Alaska. I've never been on Viking. So it's on my bucket list to get back to Alaska because I fell in love. And it's on my bucket list to try Viking. So maybe I could check off 2 bucket list items at once. Share with our listeners the glorious details of Alaska on Viking.
Yeah, so a bit like you, I love Alaska, and I've been twice before. Once on Hunter America, once on Princess. But I wanted to go back on a more adult line because on both of those, because Alaska is obviously a huge draw for families, multi-generational travelers, and on both of those, the kids just kind of took over the ship. And the ship, of course, is very full because, of course, most of those kids and teens are sharing cabins. So the ships are really full, very kind of, and they just took over kind of thing. So I thought, okay, when I go back to Alaska, I want to go on an adult-only ship. And I did want to retry Viking because I have kind of had mixed views about Viking on past trips. So I thought it's a good chance to do it. And also they had a itinerary which I like, which is the one way which goes from Seward down to Vancouver. So it's a slightly longer trip. It's a 10-day trip. So you get to go into more places. So also go into places that I hadn't been to on those previous trips. Unfortunately, of course, they don't go into Glacier Bay, which I always think is a big must, but it went to other places. So, I mean, it was great getting back to Alaska. I got to see some places that I hadn't seen before. Like I hadn't been to Valdez before. I hadn't been to Ice Strait Point before. Obviously, go to Juneau, Ketchikan, Skagway and stuff, visiting again. So, so it was great. And so I went in June. Well, I like going in June because it's busy, but it's not manically busy, but it's busy, but it's sort of, it's a good time to go. In terms of Viking, I mean, I as I said, I kind of torn on Viking. And in my video actually on Viking, at the time we're doing this, it just come out. But basically, the thing with Viking is Viking know their audience very well, but it is a fairly sedate kind of. I don't want to use. I'll use almost dull at times, if you like, more in the evening side. So, I mean, their ships are absolutely beautiful, as you probably know. All their ships are exactly the same. Although the 2 new ones which are just coming now, they're the same but a little bit bigger. So they're getting a little bit bigger. But it's under 1,000 passengers. It's like 900 and something passengers. So it's a good size. So generally speaking, there's never any lines or queues. Beautiful layout, very nice kind of Scandinavian decor. I found the food really good. Lots of dining choices. Special dining is included. They do include one excursion, but they are quite pricey. because of that. So the downsides of Viking are they they call themselves the thinking man cruise, and the owner says not the drinking man's person, sorry, thinking person's cruise, not the drinking person's cruise. So they do probably, but they probably lean a little bit into being a little bit too serious, if you like. So they have four speakers on board, one resident historian and others. So they do have a lot of enrichment talks, which are very popular, and generally speaking are very good. They were mostly destination focused. I would like them to probably be even a little bit more destination focused, because they did do talks about things like the Apollo program and stuff, which is very interesting. Sort of linked to the ship, because I was on a ship called Orion, but generally speaking, pretty good destination mission. They do have that one included excursion, but the included excursions are normally kind of a walking tour or a panoramic tour. So particularly going to somewhere like Alaska, you want to go to glaciers and you want to go on the Skagway Yukon, the Yukon and White Moss train. You want to, do those. They're not included in the included excursion. But in the evenings, they probably miss a trick on entertainment. They have four, young, very talented singers, but it's very classic, old school kind of fare. So they'll do a show like they did Fred Astaire tribute, or they did the musicals, but it's all old musicals from the 50s and 60s. They did A Top of the Pops, but again, it was music from the 50s and 60s. And I keep saying, like, I'm 65, and that is my parents' music. It's like not my, like,
Wow.
they kind of, and I know the average age is probably probably 70s, I'm guessing. I would probably at 65 was on the lower end of the age range, but still, people in their 70s, they still grew up with music from the 70s and 80s. So it's just a little bit stayed in the evening. So, and they don't have a casino. What's great is they don't have upsell, so there's no photographer, there's no shopping tables, there's no port people trying to get you to go to Diamonds International. There's none of that kind of upsell stuff. Then they do strange things, like they have Starlink now, but they've blocked streaming. So, whereas as anyone knows that Starlink can cope for not, that's the point of Starlink, but you can't buy an upgrade package to do streaming. So they're a little bit out of sync, I think, with kind of a modern person, so I couldn't, I could do a limited amount of social media stuff. I couldn't do any uploading, downloading videos. I couldn't run a live stream, stuff like that. So I sound like I'm bringing a little bit negative on Viking, but they're not. So that's why I'm torn, because they are beautiful ships. They have incredible service. The food is great. The cabins are beautiful. They have things like the spa areas included. You don't pay for that, so you can go into the bubbling, what's the thoracic, the thermal bar stuff, and the steam room, and you don't pay for that. They have incredible afternoon tea. It's very slick from that perspective. It's just that I feel they just need to do a little bit more in step with the more modern traveler, I think, is
Yeah. No streaming and Fred Astaire music. It's almost like they're saying, no, we're not even trying to diversify our demographics.
And I mean, they are the people on the ship who are absolutely, people I spoke to loved most people having a fantastic time. They enjoyed the shows. They love the speakers. So I guess they know their audience. But of course, they're bringing on more ships. They've gone public now. As they're a public listed company. So I assume there'll be lots of demand for them to grow. So it'll be interesting to see whether they evolve to just, even me as a 60-year-old person, I want to be able to stream. I want some more modern music. I don't want to just listen to classical music. I think it's a little bit more. And I use another example is, on their excursions, they did not include the Great Alaska Lumberjack Show, which to me was like, is that because it's not thinking man enough and it's a bit too cheesy and silly? But it's sort of, so I think they just need to lighten up a bit, if that's the right term. But I don't want to sound like I'm negative about Viking, because I did have a great time. They're a smaller ship. Obviously they're not. In some ports, unfortunately, like in Juneau, we had to tender, because all the big ships had the berths and stuff like that. But phenomenal service, great food. So yeah, so what I was saying to people, like, in fact, when I was doing my live stream, is like, for me, Viking is still on the list because they do what they do so well. But particularly, I think if you're going to an unusual destination, so they do like they do Japan and they do Asia and they do stuff like that. I would see them kind of high on the list where actually you really want to be focused on the destination and you're not bothered in the evening you don't have a show. The shows don't appeal to you because it's all about that destination, being immersed in it, that kind of stuff.
So did we miss any cruises that you went on in the last? I guess you were here maybe almost a year ago, 10 months ago.
Yeah, I think I've done. Yeah, so I've done. I was looking back. I think since I've done Silver Sea, South Africa. I've done a couple of Caribbeans on the new Oceania Vista.
Wow.
I went to Japan with Regent Seven Seas. I
Oh,
did the new Viva
wow. Talk
Mediterranean.
about that. Japan on Region Seven Seas. I can think
Had I
of
been to
no better itinerary and no better cruise line than that.
Yeah. And I don't think I'd been to Greenland and Canadian Arctic last time either. I did on Hapag-Lloyd. So I've done quite a few exciting things. So yeah, I mean, Japan, I've been to Japan in 26, when I'd been, maybe 2016, I think, on a couple of ports when we did a Cunard trip out of Hong Kong. So I wanted to spend more time in Japan. But yeah, it was great. I was on the Explorer, which I think is 600 passengers, if I remember correctly. So small ship, just a beautiful ship. Again, amazing food, great service, very knowledgeable about the ports because they base the ship there year after year. So the crew and the shore excursions people, they just know the ports, they know everything phenomenally well. But I had a great time. And we went to mostly kind of the places you want to tick off the list. So we went to Nagasaki, Hiroshima. We went, so we could go to Kyoto. So we went to all kind of the classic places. It was great. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that you had done so many other cruises since we last spoke. We're going to have you back on here, Gary.
Yeah, I do. I do basically a cruise a month, pretty much 10 or 11 cruises a year. Yeah.
Wow. I want to be like Gary. So what are you? What's going on these days at Tips for Travelers? I think I heard you mention you're about to put up some Viking videos.
Yeah, there's some Viking videos up. So I'm doing. I mean, as the channel suggests, Tips for Travelers, I try to get the balance. Sort of, 2 or 3 kind of more tips-based video content, and then sort of covering a destination or a cruise line. So it's sort of about 50-50, 60-40 between the two. So I've been doing a lot because of those stuff that I did in the last year since you spoke. I've also been doing stuff around, because not a lot of people do review them, reviewing things like comparing the ship within a ship experience, the small ship cruising experience, particularly for some of these destinations like South Africa or Japan, those kinds of things. But it's still mostly been in the last year ocean cruising, and actually for the next year or so, it's still mostly ocean cruising. I do need to do more river stuff. I'm a bit behind on my river stuff. I'm a bit committed to ocean at the moment, so it's mostly been ocean focused.
You mentioned river. My next cruise is a river cruise, and I know you've been on probably many. How about Amur Waterways? Have you been on Amur Waterways?
Yeah, Amur Waterways is one of my big favorites. I really like Amur Waterways. I've been on Amur in Europe and in the Nile, my Nile River cruise. I did on Amur as well. But I like Amur because I think they're kind of upmarket. They're upmarket. They're at the top end without being crazy expensive. They have very good food, very good service, very nice ships. They know the places incredibly well. I really like them, and they have quite a nice mix of excursions. Between kind of more active excursions, more kind of classic excursions. They have the wellness. I think they call them the wellness person. So they run like a wellness program on board with classes, and that's why they do have. Like when I went on Amur, I did lots of cycling tours and stuff like that, which I really like doing, or kind of hiking tours. So I really like them. They sort of, it's a bit like we were talking with Viking, although the audience, river cruise tends to be skewed a little bit older. but they sort of do address some people who want to be like active and don't just want to go and see cathedral after cathedral after cathedral, which I like. And certainly their dining is really interesting. They have, kind of healthy options and stuff, and very good at local immersion, culinary stuff. Yeah, I really like them.
What about the spa and fitness center? Have you tried any of those on Emma?
On river cruises, I'm trying to remember, many of them don't have them at all. So if I remember correctly, on the last AMA ship I was on, they had, I think, a bicycle and a rowing machine and some weights. So some cruise ship, some river cruises generally don't have spas and fitness stuff. I think I'm right in saying on AMA that because they do the wellness thing, they did have a person who did massage and stuff, but it's very low key. And I think maybe half of the river cruise lines I've been on have had even a fitness room. Just because of space, they just don't have the space.
You cruise about once a month. That just knocks me off my feet. So what do you have booked? I'm trying to figure in my head, Gary, when we're going to have you back on. We could just have you on, on a regular basis, just to catch us up with what you've been doing.
Yeah. So I think I've got about eight things booked. So my next trip. So at the time of recording this on Wednesday, so in 2 days' time, at the time we record this, I'm heading off to Australia. So I'm doing Kimberley. I'm doing an expedition cruise on Seabourn Pursuit, their new expedition ship of the Kimberley. So I'm flying to Perth and to Darwin and doing a 10 nights of Kimberley, which I'm very excited about.
Now, have you done many expedition ships? I don't hear you talking about that very much.
Yeah, no, I've done quite a few. I've been to Antarctica twice. I'm going again in November. I've been to the Canadian Arctic and Greenland. I've been to the Arctic and the Galapagos.
Wow.
So my next cruise is the Kimberley. Then I've got the group cruise to Canada. Then I'm going to Antarctica for 3 weeks. So South Georgia and Antarctica on Silver Sea, Silver Endeavour. Then at Christmas, I'm doing Regent, the new ship, the Grandeur, the Panama Canal from Miami to Los Angeles, which Marcus will be his first time on Regent. Then early next year, I'm trying the new Crystal because I want to try how they're doing. I get asked that a lot. So I'm doing a Japan, Shanghai, stuff to Manila. Then I'm try the new Explorer Journeys, which I've been desperate to try. I get asked a lot. So doing Explorer 2 to the Canary Islands out of Barcelona. Then I'm actually going on another, Paul and Carol, cruising with Paul and Carol. Well, you see, because you've spoken to them obviously on here. They've got a group cruise to Scandinavia on Sky Princess. Then I'm doing Sun Princess. I've got that booked. Then I've got towards the end of next year 25 nights West African cruise from Barcelona down to Cape Town.
Oh wow! What's that on?
That's on Regent Navigator. So there's a small 430 passenger ship, and then I have the Panama group cruise. So that's what I've got booked currently. So got most of 25's book. I've got a big middle part of 25 I've still got to fill in because I want to try like the new Virgin Brilliant Lady. And a few of the new ships come out. The new Windstar ships come out. So I'm waiting to have a look at those, starting some of the new ships.
Yeah. I just booked Brilliant Lady. In fact, I was going to ask you. You did mention Sun Princess. I was going to ask you any plan to go on some of the big the new mass market ships. You did mention Sun Princess. What about Icon?
No, I'm not going to go on Icon. I did Symphony twice actually in the last year. I did the Mediterranean. I did a Caribbean with them. So I went through. I should have said that when you were asking what I was covering to Stravis. I sort of revisited all the mega ships. So I did MSC Virtuosa, Norwegian Viva, Symphony of the Seas, to go and do the big ships. But generally speaking, kind of most of my audience is much more kind of in the premium side, and that's sort of the Honor America Celebrity, Cunard, that kind of category, and then into some of the small ship like Oceania, Windstar, Azamara. People are much more interested in me covering that stuff. So I don't plan to go on Icon at them. I don't have any plans to, but I would like to revisit Virgin because it's been a long time since I was on Virgin. I was on Virgin right at the beginning. So I want to go back and revisit Virgin.
Yeah, I saw one of your videos. I don't know if you did any more than one, but I did see one of your videos about Virgin, and that helped push me. I was on the fence about trying Virgin, and your video helped make my mind up. I saw another video, Where's Walter Travel? He just did a thing on all the food offered on Virgin, and
Right. Yeah.
that sold me. So yeah, I went on Virgin once and on Scarlet Lady and fell in love with it. So I'm kind of booked up through 25. So that's the first cruise I booked for 26, Brilliant Lady. So
And which itinerary are you doing on Brilliant Lady?
let's see. I should know this. I know the
Is
date.
it out of New York? Is it out of New York?
No, it's out of Miami.
Out of Miami.
Yeah,
Okay.
I remember the date. It's in March of 2026, but I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
I do know it's Caribbean islands, and it's islands that I have not been to.
Right.
So that doesn't tell you much, but I do know that. But
because I've been looking at it because when the time that works for me best, that problems they're actually out of New York, and they're doing like the 5-nighter down to Bermuda, which doesn't really appeal to me particularly. And I feel it's like I'd like to go on a long. So that's I've been looking at that, and it's like I'm not sure that's what I want to do, but that fits with me time wise.
yeah.
Yeah.
The one I'm on is 9 nights.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've looked at the ones you mean. Yeah. Yeah.
What I'm hoping for is they add some things to maybe add another eatery to Brilliant Lady. I haven't heard much about. I have heard that they're going to be some differences with the current fleet, but I don't know any specifics. Have you heard anything?
Yeah. No, I watched because they did a sort of a launch videos and thing, didn't they? And they hinted at stuff, and they just said, "Watch the space."
Right. Now let me ask you, longer term. I can't believe I'm asking you what's left on your bucket list. I mean, you've been on every line and been into every place. Do you have a bucket list?
Yeah, I mean, I have a list of I do, and it gets longer. I mean, the more you tick off the list, the longer the list gets, I guess. But,
I'm running into that problem.
yeah. I mean, I have. I want to do. I mentioned earlier. I want to do explore some more river stuff. So I want to do the Mississippi. I want to do the Great Lakes. I want to go back and revisit lots of lines that I haven't tried in Europe, like scenic and lines like that. I want to do a circumnavigation of Australia. Like there's quite a few lines that do like a 30-something night of that. I'd like to do much more of South America as well. I've done part of South America, but I haven't done. I'd like to do a whole circumnavigation, and I would like to do much more of Hawaii area. Those are the main ones that I've got kind of the more. I'm not really like getting to the top of my list.
Well, Gary, before we let you go, a couple of light, even fun questions. So these will be a little different than, these are questions meant for repeat guests so that my listeners and your fans can get to know you even better. I previously asked you about my favorite cruise drinks and food. You answered that back a few months ago. Have you discovered anything new you want to recommend to me and the listeners?
I don't think there's anything new other than I'm still, whenever I'm on a ship, I still hunt out if they do caviar because I love caviar. It's crazy expensive to have on land. So that's still the main thing I hunt out. Caviar and sushi is like, yeah.
You have a large following. That's an understatement, if I ever heard an understatement. Welcome to the Many Tips for Travelers fans listening. So that your fans and my listeners can get to know you better, let me ask a few questions that I tend to ask our repeat guests. Tell our listeners and your fans What's playing these days in your Bluetooth speaker, headphones, or however you consume music, audiobooks, podcasts? What are you listening to these days?
Yeah, so there's probably two things. I mean, I'm a huge podcast fan. I love listening to podcasts. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, but most of the podcasts I listen to are kind of politics and finance ones. So it's been quite interesting. Certainly at the time of recording, we just had the big election in the UK. So that's been very active, kind of lots of politics ones. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and then some sort of more geeky fan ones because I'm a big like Game of Thrones, House of Dragons fan. So I listen to a lot of the kind of the fan podcasts around those. But most of when I look at that's what I'm listening to. Like if I'm walking into the shops or going on a bus trip or something or train trip into town or something, I listen to podcasts. But I love music, but I have Amazon Music subscription, and so every Friday they bring out a new playlist of all the songs released that week, and I go and I listen to all those songs and I build playlists like songs from 24. So everyone thinks that I'm slightly weird because I'm obsessed with current music and modern kind of whatever's modern, which is kind of like the point I was saying earlier. Where I get frustrated that cruise lines think that we listen to old fuddy-duddy music. Like so I listen to when I listen to music, I'm listening to music like 2024 music or last, so I listen to that. So yeah, that's basically what I listen to. Yeah.
Who's some of your favorite music artists?
Well, it's interesting because I because like most of my kind of when I was really into music and going to see lots of concert stuff, a lot of my favorite artists, would probably still be things like the Pet Shop Boys, Madonna, that kind of era. Those are the people that I would say if someone said, "What's your favorite?" Because I do feel like although I listen to a lot of contemporary music, I feel like there don't seem any like big superstars like that anymore. I'm sure probably looking back, people when they're my age will look back at this age and talk about whoever. But those are the kind of people that I really really love, and of course both of those are still very active.
Do you enjoy attending live concerts?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I don't go to concerts as much as I used to. I go more to like live theatre these days than concerts. It's sort of the advantage of living in London and having the West End. I mean, I haven't been to concerts for a while, but I used to try, although it slipped a bit. I used to try every month when I wasn't cruising. I try and go and see at least one show. In the last year, I've slipped a bit on that, but I would normally try and go and see a show in the West End at least once a month. Yeah.
What's the last live music concert you saw?
The last live event I saw, which wasn't a concert, but it was a show, was they've just done a revival of Starlight Express. It's called theatre. Well, it's a theatre out near Wembley, the famous football stadium. Massive big theatre space, a very modern theatre. And they've built inside there. They've built a track for Starlight Express, and it's a reimagined Starlight Express. So I went to see that 2 weeks ago, and it was amazing because it's new songs. It's all on roller skates all around you. And that was great. That's the most recent live event that I've been to. Yeah.
One thing you might want to consider, Gary, because you sound like you really are into modern music. Go on a theme cruise. A cruise featuring music that you like. They are fantastic. I've been on several. And, before the cruise ever starts, there's a connectivity among the cruise goers because they're all into whatever the theme of the cruise is. So, there's rock and roll cruises, there's R&B cruises, country western cruises. So that sounds like it would be something totally different for you, but yet you would be in your element because again, I get the sense you like music, and everyone knows that you love cruising. So
exactly. No, I'd love to. I mean, the actual number one theme cruise that I want to get on, and it keeps clashing with cruises that I've got, is the Star Trek cruise. That's my ultimate theme cruise. And every year, I for 25, I book cruises around the date that I thought the Star Trek cruise would be. And they have a slightly different date and it clashes. So it's like, but that's that is the one thing because I read it, because I'm a big science fiction fan as well. So
Now, growing up in UK, not I shouldn't say growing up, but living in UK, did Soul Train come on there?
So when I was a kid, I was in Zimbabwe then, but Soul Train, yes, because there was a lot of American TV in the UK, more UK thing, but we had much more American kind of TV, so things like Soul Train and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, January of 25, I'm going on the Soul
Oh
Train
wow.
cruise,
Okay.
and yeah, the lineup is amazing. I just can't wait. So, give us a favorite recent book or article or podcast that our listeners may want to check out.
Maybe I'll talk about some YouTube channels that I obsessed with because
Sure.
because obviously being a YouTuber, I watch lots of YouTube, but I don't just watch cruising stuff. But saying that, I mean, as you probably gathered, I'm kind of a big fan of theatre and music theatre. So my favorite channel, I'll tell you my three favorite channels on YouTube. I'll tell you what they are. So is one called Wait in the Wings, which is a channel, a guy who basically kind of makes documentaries about often failed musicals and why they failed and all the story behind musicals. They're really just amazing. Trek Trendy that I mentioned earlier is another of my favorites because he does lots of trains and planes, which I'm very interested in. And then also I love Las Vegas. I'm a massive, Mark and I'm huge, big fans of Las Vegas. And often we try and go maybe once a year to Las Vegas, at least. And there's a couple of Las Vegas channels. So Jacob in Las Vegas and Ruby in Las Vegas are the two. Those are kind of my four kind of go-to YouTube channels of all. I mean, I have others, but those are like my absolute favorites.
Now, have you been to Vegas since they? I can't remember the formal name, but since they've constructed the Sphere, that venue shaped like a ball.
No, when I was last at it, yeah, they had it was due to open when I was last there. Mark's been there twice since it's opened. He's been to the Sphere. Going to Vegas at the end of the year. We're spending a week in Vegas, so yeah. So I haven't seen it operating. They were doing when I was there. They were doing the trial. We saw a little bit because they were testing the graphics, but the shows. The
Yeah, I've been to Vegas many times, but it's now back near the top of my list because I'm just fascinated by that Sphere, and I want to experience that. Well, Gary, I hope that your fans and my listeners have gotten a sense of you. I've heard a side of you that they might not ordinarily hear. It has been great talking to you. I always feel, Gary, after talking to you, I am so much smarter than when I started talking to you. And so
Thanks.
So I know we'll have you back. I could have you back every few months. You do so much cruising, but we'll space it out a little bit. So I'm sure you can go ahead and pencil in 2025, and if you'll be back, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, no, I always
again.
enjoy being on. Yeah, no, always enjoy being on.
So thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. You are one of the top personalities in cruising. As I just said, we'll definitely have you back. Continued all the best to you and Tips and Travelers. And say hi to Mark for me. And as I like to say, we'll see you on the ocean.
Brilliant. Thank you.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again for $18.99 can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the three books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.